Hey gang, Drex here from DrexFactor.com, and I wanted to talk with you a bit today about performance, and specifically the hardware that we use when performing with poi. I see a lot of folks online asking what are the best poi for X or Y, and I thought I'd try and answer that for a few special cases. I've spent a lot of time in the past few years thinking about how to get the best results from poi on stage, and I wanted to share some of what I've found with you guys. I'm going to divvy this video up into three categories: unlit or daytime poi, LED, and fire poi. But no matter which of these categories you're working with, the best option for you is going to greatly depend on what your performance area or stage is like. Before we begin, I'd also like to point one thing out. Your choices for what you spin for a performance should be based around the same criteria as every other choice you make for this performance. How do I give the audience the best experience that I possibly can? We often think of performances as an opportunity to show off our skill and be the center of attention, but personally I also see it as a form of service. You're there to entertain people, so make sure that you're considering their enjoyment of your work at least as much as you're considering your own, if not more. With all that said, let's get started by looking at unlit or daytime poi. We probably have more options in this category than any other, simply because there are more ways to build a set of unlit poi than there are ways to build LEDs or fire poi. You can have sock poi, flag poi, zuni poi, contact poi, or even poi of your own construction. I'll say up front that it's an underappreciated option, but flag or zuni poi fill up quite a lot of space and are visible from far away. They also severely restrict the vocabulary of tricks that you're able to perform with and can be a nightmare to use in the wind. If your performance space isn't windy and your choreography consists mainly of basic tricks, these are not a bad option. Sock poi are an interesting option for performance because they more or less turn the entire surface of the poi itself into a visible part of the performance. That said, they can also look amateurish if they're made out of actual socks, and generally aren't terribly visible from far away. There are some exceptions, however. Wider sock poi with stripes show up really well to an audience and are a popular option in Europe. Some examples of this kind of poi are the fairy wings poi used by Loop and Laura Leo, as well as the striped sock poi sold by Home of Poi. In general, though, I'm not a fan of sock poi for performance purposes. As for contact poi, bigger and brighter is better, especially if you're going to be on a stage. In general, the bigger the poi head, the more visible it is. Lots of people like to use 100mm heads for this reason. When it comes to your tethers, you'll always want to select a lighter color, with white being the ideal. I know they're easy to get dirty, but black tethers have a tendency to disappear, especially on stage. My preferred stage contact poi are 90mm orange heads with 8mm white ropes. This is thicker than what I normally use, but it also shows up better. Just to give you an example of this, here's a video of a performance that Mel did for PoiCon this past year with a set of darker contact poi. The lighting is good enough that you can still make out the heads, but even in a well-lit environment like this, his tethers are practically invisible. Now here's a performance I did with my contact poi a couple years ago. See how much more the poi pop? And I've got much less lighting on me than Mel did. One other quick note on color selections, especially if you're going to have stage lighting. Colors work very differently depending upon whether you're dealing with light or objects. Colored light consists solely of light of that given color, while colored objects appear that color because they're reflecting that color back to our eyes. Confused yet? Well, the thing is, they absorb every other color of light except for the color that they appear to be. Why is this important? It means that you have to be careful about matching your lighting to the color of your costuming in poi. For example, let's say that my lighting is primarily red. This means that I'm not shining any blue light on the stage, and it means that if I've selected blue poi to spin with, that they'll not reflect any light back to my audience, and they'll appear to be more or less black on stage. Here's a great example of this in action. This is a photo that was taken a couple of years ago at a stage performance in Los Angeles. My duet partner's dress seems to be covered with black flowers. When we did the same performance with different lighting the following year, however, you can see that those flowers are actually bright blue. Just like with tethers, white poi heads reflect all colors, so you're guaranteed to show up on stage. You can also get around this problem by being smart in your color selection and choosing colors for your poi that are not primary colors. One of the reasons I chose orange heads is that they show up in pretty much any lighting except for primarily blue light, and that's a really rare choice in lighting for most of the performances that I've been in. Now to LED poi. I'm going to open this section by asking how far away your audience is going to be because it's going to start making a huge difference. LED poi can be found in lower as well as higher brightness options. In general, lower brightness is appropriate for smaller audiences that are closer to you, whereas bright and larger poi are more appropriate for audiences that are larger or further away. Isn't brighter always better? No, not necessarily. I honestly get a headache from being near super bright LEDs for too long. If your audience is within 20 feet of you, they can have the same problem. Especially if you're in a small space like a club, super bright LEDs can not just be overwhelming, they're kind of obnoxious. You should also consider the effect your LEDs are going to have on what your audience can see. I'm going to do a whole video on this at some point because I think most performers haven't spent much time thinking about it, but LEDs almost always create situations where your body and tethers are unlit, and the bulk of what the audience can see is simply the ends of the poi themselves. Some LEDs are bright enough to illuminate part or all of your body, but in most cases you should assume that most of your body is going to be invisible, or at least really difficult to see. With some very bright LED poi, the body of the performer is illuminated somewhat, but that doesn't mean that the tether is. If your choreography consists of a lot of body tracers, inversions, or even negative space, Go super bright, because otherwise these tricks won't look like anything to your audience. There are some exceptions, most notably those types of poi that illuminate the entire length of the poi, or close to it, such as the light up sock poi made by Ultra Poi, Spin Optics from Lanternsmith, and of course the many varieties of LED strip poi that display greater portions of the poi to your audience. I think it's safe to say at this point that the LED strip poi are kind of considered the gold standard now for performance in high profile or corporate gigs. They're almost always a huge investment, but it's tough to beat wowing your audience with both your moves as well as the pictures that they produce. One quick word on these. Like flag poi, most LED strip poi severely limit the vocabulary of moves that you can perform with them, both because most of their length is no longer tether and thus not flexible, as well as having the weight distribution being significantly different from most practice poi. That said, the graphics that they generate frequently tip the scales back the other way for your audience. Use them at your own discretion. Finally, let's talk about fire poi. Now, let's just say up front that spinning fire for an audience is nearly always impressive in and of itself, but there are a lot of ways that it can be made even more exciting. For most sets of fire poi, unless your audience is pretty close, you're going to want to make sure that your heads are at least 3 inches or longer along one of their dimensions. There's a lot of variety and form factor for fire poi heads, but I'm going to risk oversimplifying things with this rule. A couple years ago, I did some testing with Dark Monk on different styles of fire poi heads, and we got some pretty detailed data on the size of the flame that each style creates, as well as how much fuel they absorb and how long they stay lit. I'll link to it in the description so you can get more detail on these if you want. Just like with flag and LED strip poi, you can also create a more exciting show for your audiences by using snake style poi. Like the LED strip poi, however, these come at the cost of severely restricting your vocabulary of moves. It's up to you whether it's worth it or not. Of course, just as LED strip poi are considered the go-to for corporate gigs now, the go-to for massive fire performance nowadays are cage poi. You can fill these with either steel wool or wood chips to create massive trails of sparks that create an overwhelming experience for your audience. Clearly, these are also the most dangerous type of poi that we've talked about so far, because there's a fairly good chance that they can ignite other flammable objects or liquids in the area, so make sure that your safety game is at the top of the heap. I think it's also safe to say that these restrict the type of tricks that you can use more than any other set of poi that we've looked at thus far. They also don't last very long, so the applications for these are quite limited. So, I hope this helps some of you guys out. I tried really hard to include as many options for performance types as well as poi styles as I possibly could here. So, now, what are your favorite poi to perform with? Let me know down in the comments. Thanks so much for watching and enjoy the flow. Peace. Hey there, thanks so much for watching my video. If you got anything out of it, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel to help it grow. Special thanks to all of my wonderful backers on Patreon. You guys are the ones that make these videos possible. If you're not a current backer and would like to sign up to support my channel, please visit patreon.com/DrexFactorPoi. Thanks so much in advance.